Good day, everyone, and welcome to the WANA webinar series. As you will notice, all participants have been muted. If you have a question to ask, please send your question into the Q&A panel located on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, or by pressing the three-dot option along the bottom and selecting the Q&A panel. Your questions will be answered after the presentation. If you have any technical issues, please send a private chat to the host, the directions of which can be found in the chat window. Thank you all for joining, and please welcome Pete Estrader from Independence Center. Pete?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the WANA webinar series. As a Clubhouse community, we are painfully aware of the turmoil, sickness, injustice, inequality, and confusion that are currently so rampant around the world. Especially during this time, we are deeply grateful for our international Clubhouse community that is built on the foundation of inclusion, equality, and acceptance for everyone, and a commitment to helping every person achieve his or her full potential, even in the face of significant obstacles. The world around us has a great deal to learn from our Clubhouse communities in these times. Today's webinar is called What About Work? We'll be focusing on how our clubhouses can maintain our focus on work and employment even in these difficult times. We will be hearing from Independence Center in St. Louis, Missouri in the United States, Fontenehuset Baerum in Norway, and Fountain House Stockholm in Sweden. We hope that you will be inspired by these clubhouses' persistence in supporting members to return to the dignity of paid work, even in the midst of great economic challenges in all of our communities. Our first presentation will be from Independence Center. Steve Whyte is a member who has received support in his employment journey from Independence Center community. And Joe Shaffer is on the staff at Independence Center. Take it away, guys.
Hey, everybody, we're glad to be here. My name is Joe Shaffer.
My name is Steve Whyte.
And we're going to pull up our presentation here for us. So our presentation is entitled, What About Work? How can we maintain our focus on work and employment in the current environment?
So one way of maintaining the culture of employment is to continue the employment meetings that you have been having. Independence Center has long had a history of culture of employment. And so this is only natural that we keep our education and employment meetings, only that we hold them virtually now. At these meetings, we talk about job leads, status of our transitional employments, celebrating milestones in education and employment, and benefits such as unemployment insurance. We also talk about all things employment in clubhouse meetings and unit meetings. And we now have a couple of other groups, working groups, and one of them, we help people develop resumes and tweak their resume. Another one is a more open-ended forum.
And so we, pre-COVID, we had on the books on our schedule what we call our EDGE workshop. We had that planned for March, and that's really a curriculum-based supported employment job series. So since we already had that planned, we kind of convened a working group to adapt that. And that evolved into recurring weekly support meetings, one on Tuesday that Steve mentioned that's focused on tweaking and adapting resumes in the job search process, and the other on Friday, which is kind of more open-ended and can be adapted based on individual needs at the time. Critical in maintaining, or sort of the rationale in maintaining this culture of employment is that we've also, since closing our physical clubhouse doors on March 17th, we've welcomed on 11 new members through our virtual orientation process. And we thought it to be critical to welcome them in with an existing focus and emphasis on employment, which is just such a core of our clubhouse community. So as we move forward in our presentation, essential to really understanding how COVID impacts our job support and development, we help each other to understand the changes in job roles and responsibilities, physical workspaces and protocol, and even entire industries and the local job market. Go ahead on to the next slide. Alicia Allen is a member who's continued to work a TE placement throughout the COVID-19 pandemic and gotten support from the clubhouse. And she speaks in saying, I really enjoy my job, and working during COVID-19 has helped me keep my sanity during this strange time. So we'll go ahead on to the next slide and talk about the impact.
So COVID has impacted a lot of industries, some positively, some negatively. Some of the industries that COVID has negatively affected are the service industry, the casino gaming industry. St. Louis and Illinois are kind of big on gambling. And the airline industry is another one that's been adversely affected. We did have two members that were working at the airport, one as a transporter and one in baggage claims. And neither of those members are working those jobs now. And of course, there's the hospitality industry. We had a number of positions at Chase Park Plaza Hotel, 8 transitional employments and 10 supported employments. And all of those members have been furloughed. It's also affected me personally and my dream job at the Gateway Arch. I work as a tour guide at Gateway Arch. Been doing it about 8 years. And I do the right to the top part where you're in these small pods with a bunch of people, a few people, other people, and it's just too close a space to be safe to do that with the COVID going on. So
looking forward to get back though once the tourism industry gets back rocking, right? Absolutely. So as you can see, not only has these overall industries been impacted, but it's had a large impact on the Independent Center Employment Program as a whole. Looking at that chart there, as Steve mentioned, Chase Park Plaza was our employer of the year this last year in 2019, and we had 18 members working there in a variety of different types of jobs, 8 TE and 10 supported and independent employment jobs, and all were furloughed as a result of the pandemic. Generally speaking, in our employment program, we had 45 TE placements. You see that there in the dark orange. And post-COVID, that's been down to 7. And our employment partners are beginning to kind of open up. There's going to be a lot of work going into sort of redeveloping those TE placements. And in terms of supporting and independent employment, we had 123 members working permanently. And as a result of COVID-19, that's been reduced down to 40. We've also seen this though as an opportunity for growth and job development. Grocery stores and delivery companies have seen an uptick in hiring, in addition to online learning, tutoring, and childcare, fast food in terms of meeting the needs for drive-through and curbside pickup, and even employers that have shifted their sort of bottom lines to developing personal protective equipment and COVID-related products. Watlow Electric is an employment partner of ours where we have a couple of TEs, and they shifted to making parts for respirators. And St. Louis has a large brewing and distilling industry, and a number of those companies have shifted towards making hand sanitizer. So there are some opportunities for growth. You can go ahead on to the next slide.
So we are supporting working members during COVID. To do this, we've had to have more frequent communications as well as communicating through new forums. We still do communicate face-to-face at a physical distance as needed, but staff had to be accessible and create a plan or schedule for touching base. I've had a number of staff people call me and check on me, make sure I was doing okay during this time, more so than usual because I usually attend the clubhouse a lot and the people don't get outreach a lot. But also we've had to encourage connection to the clubhouse community through Zoom meetings, which right now is easier than using public transportation or any other kind of transportation to come to and from the clubhouse from home. And we've had to ask more questions about home life and things around work in order to enable members to be a more valuable employee. So in the past, we've always asked, like, how are you doing today? But now we ask, how, are you having any symptoms of COVID? Are you feeling anxious and that sort of thing because of COVID?
And ensuring our members have access to basic needs, healthcare. A lot of our healthcare appointments have shifted towards telehealth and access to medication, just groceries, transportation implications, those types of things. We've also helped our members with communication with the employer themselves. We've seen a number of members experience schedule changes. Sometimes employers are trying to stagger shifts to minimize exposure. Additional supplies might be needed for protection on the job, and even complete changes to work responsibilities or procedures around the job. Maybe how a specific task is done, or even how our members are entering the workplace. We've seen an uptick in advocacy with residential facilities where our members are living, and in terms of, and with their employer, specifically around schedule changes that may impact curfews or times when members were getting meals and things of that nature. I mentioned a little bit about transportation implications in St. Louis in particular. Seen I'd say a large impact on public transportation. Some bus lines have been eliminated altogether. Others are going much less frequently, so helping our members to navigate how they're going to get to work and planning around that. And then many of our members are seeing changes to the layout of their physical workplace. Maybe someone that they were working alongside is now in a different part of the building, or just access to supplies and safety measures around that have changed. We're really falling back on our foundations, though, those relationships that we have that are existing there to validate and relate to our membership on the understandable increase in anxiety and kind of uncertainty as a result of COVID-19. So we can go ahead on to the next slide, where we'll hear from Tamara, who is just recently celebrated 90 days as a customer service representative for Cigna, which is an insurance company here in the US. And she says that still being able to talk to people from the clubhouse has made me feel connected and supported. It's enabled me to continue to be a reliable worker by helping me problem solve regarding work issues.
Next slide.
Next slide.
And of course, a big part of our any employment program for Clubhouse has to be job development, which has looked a little different during COVID than before. We've had to make use of, we support people both individually and in groups. And we've been rethinking short-term and long-term goals, including time off. One of the, as we talked about earlier, some industries have grown and some have gone away. So we talk to people about, sit-down jobs and work-at-home jobs. And we have to be real and say, well, you do need to be able to work on the phone and navigate the computer, develop typing skills. And also, this is a great time to reprioritize education, to develop, whether it's degrees or certifications or developing new skills that could be part of a career for the future. We're also reviewing important factors in the job search process, regards to transportation hours and safety measures. Some members used to be willing to travel a ways to get to work. Now they want to work somewhere closer to home, or they may want to work different hours, maybe open working more hours now. Employers are changing their hours, and supplying members with masks and helping members understand the safety procedures of their employers and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And other, important factors in the job search process that sort of weren't present before or are of higher emphasis now is the existing health conditions of our members. If someone may have, say, chronic asthma or a COPD, which would put them in that sort of category of being more vulnerable, how is that impacting the factors in their job search? Again, working remotely or thinking about the work environment that they're open to pursuing. We've obviously continued communicating with our existing employment partners to explore how COVID has impacted changes in their needs, changes in their scheduling and their overall workforce, as well as exploring general employment trends like we talked about in the local job market and emerging fields such as PPE production and contact tracing, or working the phones to try to identify people that have been that have tested positive for COVID and who they may have had physical interaction with. Big emphasis for us overall, as Steve mentioned, was using this extra time productively, whether it be tweaking a resume or additional interview prep using technological resources, skill building, or shifting your focus on your short-term goals to emphasize education as part of a career development path. Going on to the next slide. Michael W. is a member who landed a job during the pandemic, and he says that Independent Center gave me a lot of time and support to address my wants and needs in landing this job. They check up on me about work and how I'm coping with all this. It has really helped me a lot to keep me in the right frame of mind for my job. And he started as a customer service rep at U-Haul just about 3 months ago. So next slide.
Staff have also helped people navigate pandemic-specific issues, including unemployment insurance. There's a staff person here at the clubhouse who helped me apply for unemployment insurance and who helps me report every week about that, because I do not have that owner or have access to a computer currently, so it's helped me a lot.
Absolutely. And there's been some additional financial support, and apologies to our international colleagues. This is kind of an Americanized, American-centric issue here, but there's some additional financial support opportunities for members specifically related to COVID-19. So the pandemic unemployment helps for people that don't meet those initial earnings requirements for unemployment, as well as what's called federal pandemic unemployment compensation, which is additional money to help people get through these tough times. And there's specific impacts that kind of differ state by state that are important to be aware of. So going into our final slide, there are some future considerations for us as a clubhouse and the overall clubhouse movement.
In the past, clubhouses prioritized of having a variety of different types of transitional employment, but we're thinking in the future switching that to prioritizing a diversity of industries, different types of industries, so that what happened at Chase Park Plaza, where we lost all of our positions there, will be less likely to happen in the future. We are changing the work order day a little bit to be more technology savvy, because that's the types of jobs of the future, it seems. Members gain experience running meetings and hosting and going into Zoom and out of Zoom and meeting and unmuting.
Zooming in and out, yeah, we've been doing a lot of that. In addition to that, we want to make sure our members have access to build these skills, not just at the clubhouse, but at home as well, right? So as a clubhouse, we're exploring technology grants, resources, partnerships with telecommunication companies to try to alleviate some of those issues of inequity based on access to those resources. A big question that we're tackling is, as we hinted at, the overall unemployment locally and nationally, is how is that going to impact the level of competition for a job market for the types of jobs that our members generally are pursuing. And so we've noticed this kind of chasm in job demand, both for these higher skilled remote jobs, but also an increase in competition for those frontline workers in, say, food service or production, since there's just been an overall increase in unemployment. So it's a lot to tackle, but as always, coming together as a clubhouse community to support one another and to problem solve and strategize is how we're going about it. We look forward to hearing from our co-panelists, but we'll kick it back to you, Pete.
Thanks, Joe and Steve. A lot of good information there. Now we're going to hear from our colleagues at Fontenehuset, Baerum in Norway. I'm going to let them introduce themselves so we can get the correct pronunciations of their names.
Hello. First of all, thanks so much for inviting us. My name is Cecile Tjersland. I'm the general manager at Fontenehuset Baerum. I will just make a short presentation of our very short history as a house. We started the house in May 2017. So the first, can you take the slides, please? Yeah. The first year we were working hard just to get the work-oriented day to work. Thank you. Okay. So we have a very different situation from the previous clubhouse, because we established the first transitional employment this year, actually. We signed a contract in February and we were so proud. And we had two different jobs, the same company, or not really a company, the Norwegian church. And as a lot of other companies, also the church has had a period of time with outsourcing of services. So, but the last year we were waiting for them to insource, and finally we had a breakthrough in February. And all the time from 2018 until 2020, we had a lot of meetings. We were trying to keep in touch, invite them, send them our house magazine, so on. So now I will give the word to my colleagues. Hanna, next slide, please.
So, I'm Hanna, and I have been with the Fontenehuset Baerum since December of 2019, so I'm quite new, and my position focuses on work and studies for all of our members. Now, what happened this year, as we all know, is that Norway closed down, and at that moment we were all in alert, focusing on how can we try to make the situation as normal as possible for all of our members and not closing down any activities except the physical meetings. So we did stay very focused on work. And we were lucky that this employer, the Norwegian Church, were interested in doing the same to start up the work, even though most of the country was closed down and there were no Sunday services and so on and so forth. So the only change we made was that we delayed the startup of the 2 TEs until after Easter, and were able to do some special customization to the work that was to be carried out during this current global pandemic situation. Next slide, please. Now, we tried to normalize the process of employing the TEs, and instead of having the normal application process with the physical interviews with our members, we did everything digitally, and this also was a super opportunity to increase the digital competence of many of our members who were maybe a bit afraid of doing things digitally. And since this was also the first 2 people to be employed by this employer from our fountain house, we were also very focused on finding members who had the courage to be independent, working under these special circumstances where everything is so insecure and scary, really. And the employer was very much invested in the whole process, and therefore we were able to start up these 2 work positions. So if you can do the next slide, please. So I'm going to turn over to my colleague Jacob, who is a member of the Fountain House and who holds one of the positions.
Hi, so my name is Jacob. I've been a member of the Fountain House in Baerum for since 2017 actually. And I've gotten this job via Fontenehuset Baerum. And so it was different because normally it was not supposed to be a job that was based on disinfection and disease control. You know, it was more of a cleaning job. But I was given a special course though. So the course was to study, like disease control and disinfectant control and obviously so that, you know, sorry. So yeah.
Yeah. So do the next slide, please.
Yeah, this is me. This is the church that I clean. There's an office building and there's the church. The church is about 1,200 years old. It's one of the oldest working places that is in Baerum, actually. Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about how you've been working there now for 7 weeks without any absence at all, and what motivates you to go to work in this scary time?
Well, I don't really find it scary, but I found it more because it's a job that needs to be done, because you have a lot of older people coming to this church and they are at risk of getting infected, you know, and they're the risk group. And to clean the church and to keep it disinfected and keep it disease free, I find that very pretty powerful. It's very powerful. It's also very just culturally speaking, it's a fantastic job, really. And I enjoy it, and I enjoy it a lot, actually. I enjoy working there.
So as you see, Jacob is a super example of a model member in a TE. And this attitude that Jacob has, that we find also with a lot of our members, it has made us been able to focus on work and employment and development throughout this COVID-19 period. And we have actually signed one more TE yesterday with the Ministry of Finance. We have signed supported employment deal today. And also we have had members going out and finding jobs on their own, as Norway is as affected as any other community with lots of unemployment. And we hear, you know, for positions where they would normally have 40 applicants, there's 500, and still our members have been able to land jobs also on their own. So it doesn't work without our members and our whole staff working together. So that's really our story. I don't know if you want to add anything, Cecilia?
No, I think that's good for now, and maybe there will be some questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Fontenehuset, Baerum, and congratulations on developing those opportunities for your folks. And I want to congratulate Jacob, especially, not just for the TE, but I really dig the Dead Kennedy shirt. So now let's hear from our colleagues from Fountain House Stockholm. Again, I'm going to let them introduce themselves so we get the correct pronunciation. Go ahead, Stockholm.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anders. I'm at the Fountain House Stockholm in Sweden, and I have my colleague with me.
Hi, my name is Katti Spratt. You're welcome to try to pronounce it if you want to. I'm a member here since beginning of 2015. Also here are a few other members sitting in and listening. Well, I don't know if you heard, but of course we've been struck by the pandemic in Sweden, but we haven't had a general lockdown. So the situation here is a little bit different, but for sure unemployment is rising. But one big difference is our clubhouse has been here for 40 years, and we've kept open for business during this pandemic. There is a ban against meeting more than 50 people at a time, but that doesn't apply to workplaces. So we've had the freedom to decide whether or not we wanted to stay open, and we did. So we've been open since the first COVID-19 case was detected here in Sweden, and we did do something that wasn't really well planned. We combined the pandemic with a remodeling of our entire house. So we've been sort of overwhelmed. I'm sure you've been too, but we've just finished this huge construction, remodeling of the house. And during this time, we stayed open the whole time. So we did see a huge decrease in members attending. So we did some extension. We did more reach out and more meetings online, and our program for employment and education, we usually have a meeting once a week that is open to all members, and then members can have individual meetings with staff. But at the very beginning of the pandemic, we did stay open, but around a few people came, so we didn't do these meetings for maybe a month or
a month, I think, yes.
So maybe we didn't do the weekly meetings for maybe 4 weeks. But we did increase the reach out process, and we particularly did a special reach out for members who are working outside the house. And I'm happy to be able to tell you that none of our members who are working, none of them have been terminated. So no job loss yet, but it's looking good at this moment. And well, now it's sort of, usually we would have 50 people a day. It's been coming back up. So we've been around 35 people during a day now. So members are coming back, and probably more to do with the construction work is done. But we do, we have lots of routines when it comes to hygiene and keeping social distancing within the house. And so some things are definitely in the house, but we're open, and we see between 30, 35 people every day now. We've also just recently started up our weekly meetings for the employment and education program. What else? Well, yeah, lots and lots and lots of reach out. And usually when we call people, we usually just always ask them to come in, but now we don't ask everyone to come in because some people are older members or risk groups. And so we've actually just started, we have like a minivan. So we've started going with the car and visiting members who can't leave their house, and we meet them outdoors at the place where they live. So they get to see someone while they're in quarantine.
Must be obvious, yeah. So thank you. And like Kathy said, we have started the weekly meetings supporting our members who are working at the moment. And we also have in Stockholm, we have one TE position, and Catherine, who is at that position, she started that in February. It's a cleaning job at an art studio, and she was a bit not afraid, but as you know now, within these pandemic times, should I go out? Is it safe for me to go to work? And we spoke about that also within the Swedish society, but also in our clubhouse, and with Catherine, that she goes at some later times to the workplace, and also the places where people that go to this art studio, they also, not that many people at that place would be there working. So she was mostly alone there, cleaning and taking care of the workplace there. So, and she also says that she's got the full support from the employer, and she feels safe with having the clubhouse supporting her if anything should occur. So, but as our former presenters, I think that Independence Center, when you show the numbers of your TEs and the huge impact that this pandemic shows, I'm pretty sure that we will have some struggle later on with people, our members, seeking job opportunities in a market where the competition will be way worse than ever when this slows down a bit. So we will just have to wait and see. But we've started up our education and work program, and there's been a lot of interest for that. So we will continue to support the members of Fountain House Stockholm. I think that's about it.
I just want to mention, though, since we're talking a lot about TE, so we only have the one TE placement because the model of having TE doesn't really work with our social security system and unemployment security system. So we support members to get different forms of job, but the TE can be difficult. So that's why we haven't really focused on doing that particular form, but we still support people getting employment, of course.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Fountain House Stockholm. Sounds like you're doing a lot of good things to support your members during this uncertain time. We're going to take some time now to answer questions. I think people have been submitting the questions, and I'm going to get a little help from IVCI to answer those.
Thank you so much, Pete. For those of you that have a question that they would like to ask, please submit your questions in the Q&A panel located in the bottom right-hand side of your screen, or by pressing the three-dot option along the bottom and selecting the Q&A panel. Your first question: if TE jobs have been shut down due to the pandemic, are clubhouses helping these members financially in any way?
Let's ask Baerum that question first, and then see what Independence Center has to say. So Baerum, what are you guys doing?
Well, we are not in a situation that you described really, because we just got a TE, and we don't really think that this will be an option to lose it. But if we would lose it, we don't have any financial support system other than our welfare system, which is really good in Norway.
So there really wouldn't be necessary for us to do the financial support, as our welfare system will contribute this.
Our job will just be just supporting members in their applications and so on.
Helping people access what's there.
Yeah, and help them to execute the applications for the welfare benefits.
Okay. How about Independence Center? I think they're muted. Okay. Joe, you're muted.
Yeah, Steve did that. I blame Steve. No, what I would say, generally speaking, is that typically when someone ends a TE placement or has to come off of a TE placement, we wouldn't support them in filing for unemployment insurance. That has changed due to the criteria that I guess the term is that they haven't lost a job due to any fault of their own. So it was as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have supported members that were on TE file for unemployment insurance. Additionally, I mean, generally speaking, I think the question was about financial support. That was a big consideration as we pivoted our clubhouse services towards the physical work order day to our virtual work order week. We basically have almost a 40-hour virtual work order week. And so budgeting and managing changes in income and expenses have been a big understandable cause of concern for our members. So we've developed a budgeting working group where we're helping members to look in detail at how the pandemic has impacted their income and their expenses to help kind of minimize that anxiety around financial concerns.
Thanks, Joe. Next question.
Thank you, Pete. And I will ask that if we can go ahead and skip Stockholm for right now. We are experiencing a little bit of network glitches there, so their audio is a bit choppy. So we'll go ahead and keep the questions more for Independent Center, yourself, Pete, of course, and for the Baerum Center. So your next question today is, do you have any advice for how to approach new TE partners?
Wow, that sounds like Baerum's up Baerum's alley right now, doesn't it? But I'd like to hear from Independence Center after them.
Well, Hanna here. First of all, I'm very lucky because I started in December and now everyone is congratulating me on my fabulous work, but it's all really a result of the long work being done by staff and members here over several years. And what we're experiencing now is that it took a really long time to land that first TE deal. But once you've got one, it's like the snowball is rolling, you know, and things keep happening. But it really is all about good networking with all the resources you have in your organization. For us, the board is super important, politicians in a local environment, and all kinds of business network we have. And then it's about being persistent and not, sending out lots of email, hoping someone will land a TE in your lap, but actually book meetings, go talk to people about the whole Fountain House model, explain what the employer can actually achieve by starting up a TE employment, showing the whole organization how they take psychological health challenges seriously and treat their employers well, and also to show the communities locally and nationally how they are taking their corporate responsibilities seriously. So it's really a kind of a sales job, but also making sure that the potential employer is on your team and in your court. And then it's about really closing the deal at the perfect time. And I always try to get 2 positions in each employer's company if possible, because once you've got them positive and enthusiastic around the whole TE concept, then it could be easy to actually land more than 1 position if the company is big enough.
So you're willing to travel and help other clubhouses out, right?
Absolutely. I'm not sure Cecile is ready to let me go anytime soon.
Not yet.
Well, I know Independent Center hasn't really developed any new TEs during this time, but that doesn't mean our development efforts haven't stopped. So I will let Independent Center answer that question as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the current time, we're looking at not just TE development, but really TE redevelopment. It's been so important during this time, even though many of our TE placements have been furloughed, the individuals have been furloughed, to maintain that level of communication with each of our employment partners, so that as the economy begins to reopen, that we can sort of try to pick up where we left off and recreate that opportunity. I'd echo what Fontenehuset Baerum said in terms of the approach or the perspective that shouldn't just be any individual or individual unit, even in the clubhouse's responsibility for job development. It's the whole community. So obviously that's members, staff, board, volunteers, community partners, etc. And I think probably the most important piece anytime is the voices of our members in speaking how a TE employment opportunity was potentially life-changing for them. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Steve.
I probably would not be working today if I had not, well, not working now, but I wouldn't have a job at the Arch if I had never had a couple of TEs. Just working a couple of TEs made me more comfortable with the idea of working.
Thanks, guys. Next question.
Have you found that some members do not want to go back to their jobs even if they still have them out of fear of the virus?
Well, I know Independent Center has dealt with this. We'll let you go first, Independent Center, on this one.
Yeah, I mean, let's answer that transparently. This has been some scary times, and it's been different all over the world at different times, but and I think this has impacted individuals in a different way. So we try to, as you mentioned in the presentation, utilize our relationship to have meaningful and honest conversations with our members about their fears, but also understanding or helping with that communication with the employer about understanding maybe new safety measures or protocols or even changes in job responsibilities, as Jacob outlined, from a cleaning job to a disinfection, to try to minimize that illness exposure. So those are real and I think valid concerns that we try to address and support on an individual level.
And at my job, the Arch, I know they're talking about new safety procedures for both employees and visitors as far as wearing masks and maybe gloves or something. And also, we're not going to put 5 people in a car, like a tram car, right to the top like we have in the past, unless they're all members of the same family or all came to the Arch together.
I can personally say that I've had some experience with this as well. I have a transitional employment placement at Watlow Electric that Joe referred to. The member that's working there doesn't have any issues or problems with returning, but he has a member of his family that is at high risk, and he doesn't want to put his family at risk by working in the community either. So sometimes it's talking to the families, not just the member, but talking to the families and the other support systems as well. Baerum, do you guys have anything to add to that question?
Well, for us, it hasn't been a challenge that people were afraid to go to work if they are in regular work, supported employment, or TEs. As you saw in the slides, Jacob and his colleague Ole haven't had a single day of absence. However, we've seen in returning to the Fountain House, as we have carefully reopened over the last few weeks, we've seen more of our members being careful and afraid of coming back, afraid of commuting on the public transportations, so on and so forth. But the people who are already in work it was already a courageous move actually starting working up again after a long time out of a regular work environment. So we haven't really seen it with the people who are employed, more with the people who are a part of our work-oriented day.
Okay, thank you. What's the next question?
Has there been occurrences of the virus with those that have gone back to work?
Well, go ahead, Independent Center.
The short answer to that for us is no. I think as far as we know, yes, at this point, I mean, I think part of the level of seriousness with which we as a clubhouse, but St. Louis and as a city has addressed the pandemic in really shutting down the clubhouse doors, which is for all of us was such a hard decision to come to, but with the best interest of the safety of our members and staff was really the direction we had to go. I think we've had one instance of a staff that has contracted the virus, and maybe 3 or 4 members, all of whom we're glad to say have recovered. So thankfully that we've been able to minimize that.
I think the other part of that too is we've had work environments where people at the place of employment have tested positive. As Watlow Electric again comes to my head, there was some positive tests there, some of the fellow employees. So as an Independent Center decided that we should probably remove our transitional and placements from that environment just to minimize that risk. Baerum, have you had anybody?
No, neither from employment or actual members that are in the house. We have had 0 cases actually.
Okay,
we have a really strict disease control in Norway, and I've been working with disease control in my former job, so I'm really strict too. So what we are discussing is what would we do if we have somebody who catch the virus, and how would that affect us? How long do you have to stay at home in quarantine and so on? But so far, so good.
It's nice to have that built-in expertise. What's our next question?
Our clubhouse is located in a rural area. Our members rely on us for transportation to get to their TE positions. Our hospice is not currently allowing for transportation due to COVID. Therefore, our TEs are not being worked. Any ideas on what we can do?
This is probably an American issue. So maybe Independent Center can help with that a little bit. Even though we don't have that particular issue, we've dealt with it with other clubhouses as a training base.
I guess a couple of things that come to mind. Number one is just having open conversations with the employer and with the member so that they're clear on that. Hey, that member wants to continue working, but due to impact on transportation is unable to do so. I think in other ways we've been able to advocate at the local government and state government level for changes in certain policies. So for being able to provide services with telehealth. And so that may be an opportunity in hearing the voice from the employer and from the member to go to your hospice agency and advocate and say and explain to them, hey, this is how this Jacob spoke poignantly about how powerful it feels for him to have this job opportunity. Share that member's voice with the hospice. Hey, I want to work, and this is and I am unable to do so because I'm reliant on the clubhouse for transportation. You may be able to advocate just to provide transportation specifically for the job, and not necessarily to access the clubhouse. So those are a couple of things that come to mind as far as options to pursue.
I know of clubhouses out there that I've communicated with too that they're relying a lot more now on their clubhouse and using clubhouse vehicles or personal vehicles and member drivers and staff drivers to help fill that gap. So it's one of those deals where clubhouses do something very well is deal with an issue and use the expertise they have, and if they don't have it, they find it, right? So I'm trying to think of a clubhouse off the top of my head that's dealing with this now. I know Gateway in South Carolina is dealing with some of this transportation issues. I don't know if anybody from Gateway is here, and I might be mistaken about that, but I know there's some rural Missouri clubhouses that are struggling with this too, and they're actually using a lot more personal and clubhouse vehicles for transportation now. I don't think it's an issue for folks in Norway. They don't have hospice agencies, I don't think. What's the next question?
Before a member resumes his or her TE placement, are you requesting health and safety plans from the employer?
I know this one. Go ahead, Joe.
We've supported our staff placement managers in, as I mentioned before, having ongoing conversations with employers about increased or enhanced, or maybe expanded safety measures to make sure that they're in line with what our members and our staff as placement managers need for that matter. So yes, we have requested that each of our transitional employment placements provide us with a document of their either their specific safety protocol or any additional sort of measures as it pertains to COVID-19 and disease control.
Baerum, are you guys doing anything requiring protocols from employers?
No, we don't actually ask for that because in Norway there are strict laws concerning that kind of documentation. And if Jacob comes to his TE work, he can always ask to see it. And I think we have a good example when he started to work. The first thing he did was to have this special course for disease control. So I think everything is in order, but we don't have a routine for asking for it. Maybe we should.
Thank you. Next question.
This will be your final question today. What advice would you give to clubhouses about keeping the momentum around work alive, even during this time?
Okay, let's go ahead, Baerum. Baerum, the Independent Center. Let's both of you answer that one, please.
This, of course, has been a super important focus for us from day one of the shutdown due to the pandemic. And it's about trying to keep routine as normal as possible. So if I was to do a CV session with a member, instead of meeting in the Fontenehuset, we would meet outside sitting on separate benches or doing it online. And this is just an example of the activities we will have to keep rolling. You know, any kind of career club or job club you might have on your fountain house, and also the research into which members will need your support and any kind of training, not just following up on the processes that have already been started, but to make sure to start new processes for new members and new groups in the fountain house, whether it has to be digital, whether it's physically at the house or outside, one-to-one, face-to-face.
Okay, thank you. Center, you want to have the last question?
Sure. I mean, I guess what I'd say for us is that we found generally that our members continue to want to work, and the job or the role of the clubhouse is to continue to support members and to utilize this challenging time as an opportunity to come together, to adapt, to meet those challenges. And then I think one unique, I guess, result of this is that because we've been, sort of physically separated and isolated, we've had to utilize this technology to connect ourselves. It's kind of caused the international clubhouse community to be more connected in some ways and working together to strategize and support one another. So I think that's a really cool result of all of this. So we continue to stay positive and optimistic and not let any of these challenges stand in our way.
And we have all kinds of electronic meetings, as alluded to earlier, and also staff will meet. Sometimes some staff have appointments with some members at a certain time of the week, certain day of the week, certain time, where they get with our members and talk with them over the phone.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. I want to thank, first of all, the panelists that participated in this webinar. And I want to thank everybody out there that joined the webinar today. We hope you've been inspired to work even harder to ensure that Clubhouse members have access to paid employments and to the important supports that Clubhouses provide to help members sustain their employment. I'm going to do a shameless plug here real quick. Independent Center has been collaborating with Alliance House and Gateway Clubhouse, and we have open forums on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and we talk about such subjects as employment and reopening your clubhouses and things like that. And I think you can go on the Independent Center website and get, or Gateway or Alliance Clubhouse websites and get more information about that. The next webinar in the WANA series will be Wednesday, June 17th. Details will be sent out as soon as we get closer to the event. In the meantime, thank you again, and everybody stay safe. I think the IVCI folks are going to give you some technical support right after this to get this meeting later on. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. If we have not answered your questions, please send an email to wanawebinar@fountainhouse.org. The recording will be available next week, and the slides will be distributed tomorrow. There will be a brief survey on screen once the event ends today. Please take a moment to fill it out to give us your feedback. Thank you for coming to the webinar. Please be on the lookout for announcements regarding our future webinars. Have a great day.